One of the most remarkable, illegal, shocking robberies in the history, in plain sight. In plain sight, no closed door meetings, nothing behind, just right in your face, putting a gun in your mouth and saying, give us all your money. That is what Robinhood, crooks, jail, the Citadel, Ken Griffin, jail, Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, jail, are doing.
They're saying it's a prank and that like Reddit is just doing it for like laughs.
It's kind of financial terrorism.
It's not financial terrorism.
Because
this is how the fucking market works. They're just mad because this is the first time they're getting an unlubed dildo up their ass.
Am I going to feel bad for the smartest and most sophisticated players making derivative products for themselves that didn't turn out like the way they wanted them to? You had $70 billion basically go from hedge funds to schmucks that follow a Reddit.
They literally outplayed them in their own game.
$70 billion. A billion with a B.
I mean, you have hedge fund managers crying on CNBC. This will end badly. For who? By the way, it's been ending badly for the American people every day for the last fucking 40 years.
What was it really? It was just regular investors getting together and deciding they were going to buy a stock. They bet on a company that a whole bunch of rich people were betting against, and they won.
Wall Street Bets has turned into like the last bastion of unpoliced wild action. This isn't investing.com. This isn't Investopedia. This is where people are literally going on and posting ridiculous casino plays.
I've been following them for around about a year. They are they are phenomenal.
Unless you're posting your options plays, I don't give a fuck about your Pfizer stock. It's show me your gains, post them, and then lose or fail.
If you want to go back and look at the best stuff, YouTube search dankest trades of Wall Street Bets, and they did a quarterly roundup of like the most mad shit.
What's interesting is that this week they've really taken control of GameStop and are the little guys, fighting Goliath right now. And they've got a chance to sink some really, really big shorts.
Most people, they buy stocks that they think are going to go up because the company's going to grow. But there's another way to play the stock market, which is to what we call short a stock, which is basically it's a bet that the price is going to go down.
It's a way that you can make some money, but it's also very dangerous. And this is why most average people don't get into shorting. If a stock is at $10 a share, you borrow that from somebody and you sell it. So if it goes down to $5 a share, you buy it back for $5 a share, you pocket the $5.
You call your broker, right? And he loans you X number of stocks, right? And you think it's going to go down by this time. And you sell the stocks, which is fucking nuts to me, and you taking the money because you're hoping the stock goes down so you can buy it at a different rate, a lower rate, right? And then you keep what you sold, what the difference, okay?
And the more the stock falls, the more profitable it is for you. So you're selling now and buying later. It's a reversal of the normal market technique.
They noticed that what was going on with GameStop stock was that a lot of hedge funds had taken big short positions, meaning very large bets in the billions of the chance of that stock going down. And so they all said, hey.
I mean, the upside on this, what were they shorting it at $4 a share? So that like you kind of have a maximum gain of what, 3.99 a share and an upside loss of potentially $250 a share.
Well, so, right. I mean, and going forward in the future, it's really almost infinite.
Point is this: shorting is the riskiest thing you can do in any equity because your limit on your losses are infinite. If that stock, you buy it at $20 and you're trying to short it and it goes all the way up to 1,000, you have to pay for it.
One of the reasons why hedge funds use this tactic, whereas regular people don't tend to, is that you're kind of incapable of covering the potential loss of it all. So the hedge funds...
Oh, I just want to make that clear to people. So there's a big asymmetry because the floor is the stock goes to effectively $0.
Yes.
But there's no ceiling. The ceiling is in the sky. So, so there's a big asymmetry there.
You could lose numbers we don't even understand.
But when the hedge funds get together and they all short a company, usually they can manipulate the market enough to get the results that they wanted.
You take a couple hedge funds boys, and they go out for happy hour and get a little shitty and talk about, hey, let's have a nice big short tomorrow.
Because then it seems like an organic wave. If enough people, they call them whales, I believe. If enough people are forcing a market to move in a certain direction, that price is an indicator of something. And me as a random person, if I'm not aware that they're all doing this, it'll be like, okay, this stock is going down. That'll encourage me to sell. And the more people sell, that drives the price down. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they can make the market.
It's a volatile stock, man. And this is the kind of stock you could see this bad boy down 10, 15, 20 points over the course of a week easily.
Howard, let me ask you a question because you have more personal direct experience, as being a former broker. The short interest is, I think it's 145% now. If the short interest is over 100%, does that mean somebody is borrowing somebody's already shorted own stock? How can...
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's 145
on top.
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's my problem with your thesis. These guys go out and get drunk and they say, we're going to short the fucking shit out of this. The juice on those available shares to short is going to go through the roof because they're hard to find.
I think they were the most shorted company by like hedge funds. And then the people on Reddit got wind of this.
GameStop is the highest shorted stock in the entire stock market right now. At one point, it had 165% short interest. It's dipped down to 145.
So they shorted 140% of the stock. So it was a huge amount. It was more than all.
I know it was more than 100%. I didn't know the 140% number.
So that's why even a small amount is going to screw people enormously.
Exactly.
Now I see what you're doing. This is not a meme anymore. There's actual fundamentals behind the reason that you are doing this.
Right now, an astounding 144% of GameStop shares have been sold short. Oh, that's far more than there is. That's not right. Shares can't be borrowed. When you can't find shares to borrow, your broker will close out your short position, which is how something like GameStop could tack on 27% today.
And for every short, you got to remember, for every transaction, there's two sides to the transaction. For the guy that sells the short, the guy that's buying it says it's going up. So as long as that volume is available on the other side for people to buy these shares on dips, I think it's a war of attrition.
Because so many hedge funds had shorted the stock, they were obligated to buy it back at the market price.
Oh boy, that makes them short sellers easy pickings.
You're looking at this shit on Reddit.
Yep.
And now take a deep breath and think, how many of these guys on there? Like, I could go on there tomorrow and be like, hey guys, I just picked up 2.5 million shares to put in my head. How many of these guys are full of shit? How many are being honest?
I can answer that because there's a post or ban policy on Reddit. So if you take a position and you don't post a screenshot, it's get the fuck off. But people know each other there, and there's some they call themselves autists, which means like you're the best trader of all time. You're like Rain Man, you're autistic. So if you kick ass on Wall Street Bets, you're a fucking autist. So the point is there's massive amounts of legitimate positions being posted. Oh, YOLO. We should discuss what YOLO means.
I know what YOLO means, but
right. So it's a subcategory on Wall Street Bets, which is YOLO. And that means you only live once, you're going all in on one stock, you post your position, and then you either turn it into gain porn or loss porn. And then you post your porn, and if it's fucking through the roof, people are giving you online trinkets and crown hats that have no intrinsic value, but you got bragging rights. All right, what happened is this. GameStop started out, a user by the name of Deep Fucking Value posted a position. A position is an entry or a holding on any equity, and posted his thesis on why he thought GameStop was undervalued.
I didn't actually read the whole due diligence. I just saw people buying GameStop in the beginning, and I thought this is an obsolete retailer.
And at the time, I think it was trading for like $4 a share. Everybody said brick and mortar's dead.
This company makes no fucking money.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Nothing.
It's
this
like
stock
they're making money
loses
off of just investing.
They lose over $4 per fucking share.
And it's not a surprise because this doesn't take much wisdom to be like, all right, Blockbuster, right? If you tell me you think Blockbuster is a safe bet, it's going to go up or down a year from now, it's going to be like, come on, we all know where this is going.
I am not a video game nerd, but apparently you had two big cycles come out with Xbox and PlayStation like a month or 3 ago. So when you buy a share of something, it goes up or it goes. A call is a bet that it's going to go up. If you get a massive spike, you cash big time. It's one of the best forms of gambling that exists on the planet. And now it's so accessible to everybody because when Corona came and the market shit tanked, people couldn't gamble anymore. There's no card rooms to go to. There's no sports to bet on. So everybody literally moved into the market. Now there's 1.8 million members on this thread. This all started when Deep fucking Value came in, and like a ninja, he posts his position. Everybody says, you're fucking crazy. You're going to lose all your money. You made the biggest mistake. He doesn't even respond to them. He's just like this fucking ethereal presence. And everybody's just like, you just blew, because he started with 100 grand or maybe 40. And everybody's like, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Well, what he did was he bought dirt cheap leaps, which is an option, but a year out. So it's a very long option. I would say around late summer, early fall, the stock made a move.
And then it went from 4 to 14. And I said, okay, whatever. It went to 20 to 30 to 40. And then once it hit 40, that's when I actually started reading the due diligence section.
And then he starts gaining this momentum. And they're like, this guy's still fucking in. And they're like, get out. You're up $1.2 million. You made your money. You can retire. And all he does is just post his monthly position. And these guys are like, he's still fucking in. The thesis evolved into, this isn't just a value play. This is a short squeeze waiting to happen. At this point, everybody jumps on board. And I've been on Reddit on Wall Street Bets, and I commented 3 times. And I've got, I'm holding it. I'm thinking to myself, if I'm holding it and I don't have time to comment, how many people are really holding this? And then the big positions started getting posted. Guys putting $2 or $3 million just in shares. And it's turned into this roller coaster. Everybody has a piece of GameStop if they're associated with Wall Street Bets now. The short squeeze of, I don't know, I would say the century was VW. And this did happen once before. And the short interest wasn't even nearly as heavy as what we're seeing in GameStop. But it did spike up massively, I want to say for 10 minutes, and then fell back to earth.
What makes it a little different is that short squeeze situation is where there's contracts, which I think it just happened because the market just closed. Because those contracts exist, someone has to buy that contract at the end of the day when the contract comes to.
When does the market close?
4 o'clock every day.
Oh, 4 o'clock East Coast time?
It just closed, half an hour ago. So that's what this big issue was these contracts you could tell were going to close on the 29th, which is Friday at 4 p.m. And when that happens, whoever holds that contract has to fill the contract. So they have to find the shares.
So that's why
trying
these
to drive
hedge
the price
fund
so
people
high.
are fucked.
You can basically just see that someone's shorting more than what's available, and then you can force the share price up, and then it continues to rise, and then they're forced to go buy it, continues to force it up. So it's not like that crazy of a thing that happened here.
And Wall Street Bets has I think they've got millions of people in this subreddit group, and it's all about people who are, looking at what to invest in and things like that. So this ended up driving the stock through the roof. They knew that the stock was going up now. Now they know that all these hedge funds have to buy it back. So then they know that they can drive it up even more. Then Elon Musk tweeted it out.
They're not buying calls. They're not buying options. They're buying shares and they're holding long because, like I said, this is personal. And they want to be the story. They're going to make a movie about this guy. What was GameStop up today? 10%. So they don't know. Nobody knows. But I know, because I hang out with these fucking autists, that it's real. And it's no longer about making money. These people are very personal. They'll be like, I can only afford 8 shares, but I'm in because I want to bring down Wall Street. And then you'll see guys posting $2 million positions. And of course, you've got Deep Value, who literally turned 40 grand into $7.5 million in a year's time.
I will put in less than 1% of my portfolio so that if it goes to 0, I won't care. But if it does continue to go up, I can say I was part of this moment in history.
We've never seen an influx of retail money in a stock market like this ever. And it's young money. And what does that mean? It means dumb money. But in the GameStop case, in my opinion, it means underestimated money because these guys are smart. They're tribal. They've formed a consortium, and they're not selling out because it's not just about the money. It's getting personal, and they want to sink the big guys. And that's why I find this whole story just fascinating.
Is it systemic risk? Well, that's why we're worried that the center will not hold and the entire market could collapse.
I think this thing is not going to stop because I really think the bandwagon momentum on WSB is real. And I think there's so many more people like me that lurk in the shadows that don't post their positions because they're like, who gives a fuck? I don't have time for this. I think there's so many more people in the shadows like me that are in the stock. So that's why I'll take the risk.
And so they all got together, thousands of them, and they bought a shitload of that stock, and the price went fucking flying, like went way up.
Yeah.
And so then all the hedge fund people that were gambling on it losing money, they lost billions of dollars. Like instantly. And Wall Street started panicking. And so then they realized, these Redditors realized they can do this. So they started doing with other stocks, like movie theater stocks.
You know, we've been trying to inform, you certainly have been working to inform what you call the retail investor. You call these guys.
The regular person.
Right, the merry men, because they're different. This is a different cohort to a
But
certain extent.
They're very, look.
How are you going to stop Reddit? How are you going to stop these intelligent fucking people with plenty of time? That are organizing.
Can but you'd have to know how to actually do it. Because I was over here like, maybe I should call my brother and tell him he should get in on this.
People are trying to buy stock in a free market, and they're trying to buy companies like GameStop and AMC and Nokia. These are not companies that are under investigation.
Troy Bruce says the elites think that they will defeat us, but we will not budge. I'm currently holding 100 shares of GameStop with my diamond hands. If deep effing value holds, we hold. GameStop past the moon, headed for Alpha Centauri.
You've got the ability to coordinate so effectively. The proletariat can now gather en masse, and they can do things instantly. And there's, no matter how big the hedge fund is, we've seen here power in numbers on the internet, timed correctly, enough understanding of what's going on, and a lot of caffeine. Like, you combine those things together.
These Wall Street firms, their exposure is nearly infinite. The shorts can keep climbing as the value keeps growing. But for most of these people that are throwing in a couple bucks or throwing in a couple $100, their risk is literally just that money. If I buy a stock for $10 and the stock hits zero, I lost $10. I don't care. But if you have 5 million people doing that, all putting in that money, now you've got $50 million invested in these companies. Sure, $50 million could be lost, but for an individual, it's not that much.
They don't even care if they make money as long as the hedge fund guys lose.
I saw a lot of that on my timeline today where they're like, it's not even about the money now. I don't even care.
They have pushed the prices of these stocks up, forcing all the hedge fund managers and hedge funds that have shorted these stocks to cover their bets, and they're not happy about it.
This is a business transaction that has a time limit to it. And you said within
that's the key. You don't actually own the stock, but there's a time value involved, and that is the key to everything. In other words, Sam, you like IBM, you want to hold it for 3 years. That's
you
a beautiful
would like
thing.
IBM. Uber stock.
Cool. All the little guys are like, let's just hold, don't sell.
The little guys
don't sell.
are generally retail investors.
It was
and
like a
also,
prank, though, right? The people are on like.
It's
Reddit.
not a prank. This is real money.
First of all, congratulations to them. We all wish people can make as much money. And we wish they were making it on Apple, or we wish they were making it on Microsoft.
It's one of the first times the retail investor is going to fuck a hedge fund. And so mainstream media is painting retail investors as doing some sort of collusion or market manipulation. But what the fuck is market manipulation?
That's what
there's no such thing. Like, then what the fuck is Jim Cramer doing every day? I'll tell you one thing Brett doesn't have. He doesn't have paper hands. Fuck them. He's going to hold on to GameStop.
That's right.
Through the squeeze,
I don't have
baby.
paper hands.
Did you invest in GameStop?
I did.
They got
How
paper
much?
hands.
I honestly want to know, $850.
Hold the line.
Hold the line.
Buy the stocks. Hold their feet to the fire.
You've got an economy shuttered. and a bunch of people sitting around saying, what do I do? I'm angry. And then some dude goes, hey, you know that stimulus check you got? Hey, just put a little bit into this stock. They'll lose billions of dollars. Okay, click. I'm done.
This is not a hack. This is an exploit.
People who don't know what stocks are, don't know how trading works, aren't on Robinhood, aren't on any of these apps, and they're like, I'm in.
It's really these independent day traders versus, the Goliath institutional big banks, hedge fund people. It's one of the most interesting things in finance that has probably ever happened in history. And people are lining up on either side of it. Dave Portnoy and Elon Musk seem to be for this kind of, disruption. And then you have people like Elizabeth Warren.
We all see what's happening with GameStop. There are rich people on both sides of this, people who are trying, it appears, to manipulate this market. How do you know who's manipulating the stock at this point? I mean, people are liking to tell a David versus Goliath story, but are you entirely sure that's right? Are you entirely sure that there aren't wealthy people on both sides? It's bad for Wall Street, but ultimately it's bad for our country.
What it really is people trying to wrestle back a little bit of power, not even a lot, a tiny bit of power from these oligarchs, and they won't have it. They can't do it. They won't let you do it. GameStop gets to 400, they halt trading.
It is currently holding the price that it is holding in spite of the fact that people are literally not able to buy in.
I mean, you have hedge fund managers crying on CNBC. Leon Cooperman's in tears on CNBC, be like, I care. That's why I'm upset. It's because I care. Remember that. You're making money and they're crying because they care about you. It would be like if you walked in with a winning scratch off and you won 30 grand and everyone you told started crying. You're going, this isn't the way it should work. What about the fundamentals? What? Well, what about necessary market functions? What? Remember everyone who was against this. Remember everybody that came out and said that this was egregious and it leads to market instability.
It really puts a lot of question about the integrity of the market, right? And it really kind of, everybody's scratching their heads over this. What should happen? What is the right thing to do to control this or stop this? Not unlike what we saw on January 6th at the Capitol, right? If you don't have the police in there at the right time, things go a little crazy. And that's kind of feels like what's happening with this. Much different, much lesser degree. It's financial harm, not personal bodily harm. But certainly that's the same kind of, platform created frenzy that people are operating under. And these are very trying times.
Would you mind explaining to me what the harm here is?
Well, I think you know what the harm here is, Rob. I think it's very obvious. According to according to Reuters, the losses on shorts topped $70 billion. So there's the harm. There's the harm. Hedge funds lost money.
Wealthy people took a real licking on this one.
Yeah, that's right. So there's your harm. It's kind of just like this violent insurrection, except this time with regular investors betting on a stock that did well. They're concerned that they can't do this, that nothing's stopping them from doing this again. That, now okay, so
wait, stop. Wait, come on, you're going too fast.
Carl, you see this too. The system is broken right now for certain stocks, for the heavily shorted stocks. Take the home run. Don't go for the grand slam. Take the home run. You've already won. You've won the game.
They played by the rules that had been set against them.
Yes.
And they used those rules to win. And those rules, as you were just saying, are still in there.
It's not even that it can continue to happen. It's that it's almost impossible to stop.
Correct. This is the beginning. Okay. The Wall Street bets and now all of the angry people have found the fusion reactor weak point of the Wall Street Death Star.
I wish you were only dealing with one group of nefarious elites. You're actually dealing with many different cartels of people, all whom want you dead. The forces that are united against us here are inconceivably powerful, incredibly dedicated, very connected, and every day while you are sleeping, they are marshaling their considerable amount of power, all of their resources, their legal team, their marketing department, their brand ambassadors, their social media influencers. They're getting them all together, and they're going to put together a war chest of fucking just, it's just going to blind you.
I heard about this clubhouse, and this has got to be part of the simulation. So I just thought, why not?
I'm on Clubhouse now, which is a new app that I have invites to, and none of you are getting invites. Clubhouse is an invite-only app. It's drop-in audio chat. And everybody on there, not everybody, but a lot of people on there are entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, investors, people that have come up with very successful apps. They're running the world. They're going to run the world. They're going to win. When they talk, they have this very cold-blooded, I should
say I just randomly downloaded Clubhouse a couple of days ago just to see what it was all about. So this is my first time literally using the app. But yeah,
It is the dystopian nightmare that you feared. They are preparing it for you as you sleep. Truly. They are. And not to sound too crazy about it, but when you hear these people talk and they're not emotional, it's very cold, it's calculated. They're just like, this is how it is now.
We don't have the full details. It's a little bit of an opaque formula, but there's a component called the VAR of it, which is value at risk. And that's based on kind of some fairly quantitative things, although it's not fully transparent. So there are ways to reverse engineer it, but it's not kind of publicly shared. And then there's a special component, which is discretionary. So that kind of acts as a multiplier.
And this is just listening on this app, which I spend 3 or 4 hours on a night because it's fucking fascinating. But I'm a roach in there. They look at me like a roach. I'm like a jester that they bring out, like, hey, make everyone laugh. And then we're going to talk about, the type of shackles that we get that's going to go right around the arm. Yeah, we got a good one. We're saving money on metal. So the chain, we're switching from metal. We're going to do an elastic chain. It's like a polymer. So you feel like you can go somewhere, but it snaps you back. So, and that's what they talk about. And then every now and then I come in and I make a joke and I'm like, well, what about a polymer chain? And they go, ha, ha, ha.
The GameStop rebellion has the machine shook. They're scared. The hedge funds are set to lose a lot of money, and people are starting to realize that this goes well beyond just buying stock in GameStop. Recently, Mark Cuban held an AMA, an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit, where he ultimately told the Wall Street Bets Redditors, now 8.2 plus million, to hold the GameStop stock, even though the price has been tanking dramatically.
When it gets to this point where you've just got an open public revolt that's just essentially burning money to hurt Wall Street, okay, you've gone wrong. You've gone wrong. Something has been messed up.
One of the biggest chat rooms is known as Wall Street Bets. And a few months ago, some guys on there realized that there were some very big short sellers in GameStop, professional investors who were betting the stock price was going to go down. And so what happened? Normally, when the big boys take a position like that, everybody else gets out of the way.
I'm just going to guess right off the top of my head. I'm going to say that the institutions own 75% of that company, GameStop. So if that's the case, you basically have about 25 million for the little guy. So how much can they move that stock? That's an interesting thing.
Yes, lots of people are making money right now. Yes, 1 or 2 hedge funds are blowing up, but there's still always going to be a systemic disadvantage that retail has.
Like after hours trading is not something a retail investor gets to do, and these hedge funds do get to do. And that's what was happening maybe 2 days ago. They were driving the price down because they have the ability to do that.
There could be 7,000 guys like yourself all buying it.
50% of Robinhood clients hold some GameStop stock.
And all it takes is a couple, 1 or 2 big institution guys to come in and short the shit out of it, or not even short it, just sell it, start getting rid of large positions. And that's how stocks go down. So that's the difference.
You see, those on Wall Street Bets are saying this is called a short ladder attack. Essentially, the hedge funds are manipulating the stock, trading between each other to drive the price down so that it appears as though the stock is valueless, people panic, and then they sell.
You have the vast collection of small people looking up at the giant institution and saying, well, why them and not me?
I woke up this morning, it's like I was looking at my Nokia stock and the price is going down, and I'm like, I can't buy any. I wanted to buy the dip.
You got to remember, for every transaction, there's two sides to the transaction. For the guy that sells the short, the guy that's buying it says it's going up. So as long as that volume is available on the other side for people to buy these shares,
it won't let me. They're forcing the market to crash. It is so obvious what they're doing to rig the game now, and everyone's just watching them do it.
You're referencing like apps like Robinhood, which have just cut off trading to people.
Only buying, which means you can sell it to the fat cats,
but you can't.
So the price can go down, but you can't buy it back.
The actual scandal is the intervention to make that fight in the market no longer free.
And then when they start making any kind of motions, the giant institution moves to protect its interests, which means breaking the rules and acting arbitrarily, acting in a way that nobody really expected them to act, like Robinhood ceasing the buying of GME shares.
The company founded to democratize finance has decided, okay, that's enough democracy. Now we're iron fisting finance for all.
We did operational processes to make sure that customers that had positions could sell their open positions.
They allowed you to sell it.
But not
they allowed you to sell it, but you couldn't buy any more of it. They wouldn't let you keep driving up the price. And now they're claiming that they were all doing this for some reason of compliance or something like that.
Robinhood is supposed to be steal from the rich, give to the poor. That's the story of Robinhood. Instead, they are protecting all these hedge fund people.
Robinhood, and I saw Portnoy, the guy who runs Barstool Sports, talking about this. What they're doing is criminal today, and it's just out in the open. This is the type of event that, like, all these, smaller companies, trade freely, are, like, built upon, right? Like, some massive, craze happens. Like, oh, wow, you were in on it. Oh, man, you did it right from your phone. That's the whole dream of these apps, right? And when they just snuff something like that out, well, what's the fucking point? I saw a lot of pissed off people today, too.
They could go ahead and change their name to Sheriff of Nottingham. Yes.
That was just done purely to protect Robinhood as a company. It wasn't even to protect Wall Street, because they had this vulnerability, because everything has limits, I suppose. But there's obviously, I think that there's probably shenanigans going on behind the scenes at this point, because I think they've realized, oh my God, this has cost Wall Street in total something like $70 billion. And that's massive, for a bunch of idiots on Reddit.
Scratch that. Actually, that news was a couple days old. Make it $19 billion. Loss is so massive that some major hedge funds were speculated to be facing bankruptcy, though the hedge funds deny that word.
Google salvaged Robinhood's one-star rating by deleting nearly 100,000 negative reviews. Unhappy users have been review bombing the app. That's a legit criticism.
People use the Robinhood app under the premise that they can move their money and make investments according to their own will and judgment. And Robinhood revoking that arrangement, revoking the central service of the app, is exactly why an app should get a poor review. It's deceptive to the consumer. It's manipulative to the market. It's not trolling. It's a breach of business ethics.
This was an internal operational and risk management decision that the firm made so that we could protect the firm and protect our customers.
They've got a massive class action against Robinhood by basically half their user base because they shut down the trading of certain stocks. The thing is, that's probably illegal. When Vlad went on TV, we had to do this to protect people. No, you don't. The right to be stupid is basically the whole gist of the stock market.
It's not the job of my banker to judge the wisdom of my spending. It's not the job of my brokerage to judge the wisdom of my investments. Such meddling would not only be morally wrong, but probably legally implicating too.
So you have demand that has been artificially decreased by brokerages that have decided, and that maybe wind up being illegal, to not allow you to purchase the stock. And in spite of that, this is holding over $200. The fact that it's holding over $200 is a real sign of solidarity between the people that just want to see the individuals that took this corrupt action burn.
Even Robinhood, they know their margin requirements. They know who they're extending credit to. They know exactly what they're doing. They're in it for money, and if they fuck up, there's consequences.
The fact that they call themselves Robinhood
Oh, yeah.
You know,
part of what's been really difficult is Robinhood stands for, democratizing access to stocks, and we want to give people the access. So that's been very, very challenging. But we had no choice in this case. We had to conform to our regulatory capital requirements.
Folks, being on this app for 3 fucking days, it's coming tomorrow. It's not coming in 6 months or a year. It's here. You just don't know it yet. I'm telling you right now.
If you don't know what Robinhood does, and firstly, if you're a retail investor, it's better for you. The fact that you're not paying commissions and you want to buy a share of General Electric and maybe it's 1% of a penny higher, it doesn't matter to you. But what they're doing is they package together everyone's orders and they front run them through their the high speed trading or whatever.
The reason that's important is because the firm that you give your order flow to knows what your executions are, and they can run in front of it and front run and trade ahead of it and make profits, which may be fine or may not be fine. But I just thought that that's important to mention.
So you're
Citadel.
Sorry, you're just about to say, and Citadel's the one who receives that advance
Correct.
information from Robinhood.
Everyone's looking to buy General Electric, so they get ahead of it, they buy it and sell it to you. Overall versus the commit, everyone wins. It's an interesting capitalist thing here. But Robinhood is not there, like you said, to take money from the big players and give it to you. They're there as a tool of the institutional players so that they can front run your orders.
So I'm the chief executive of Robinhood. It's actually a couple of companies. So there's an introducing broker dealer called Robinhood Financial, and that basically is the app that you know and love. Then there's a clearing broker dealer, Robinhood Securities, that clears and settles the trades.
So Robinhood, at least from what I'm hearing here, is doing some of their own clearing. So that means that if they're not able to allow you to buy, but they can allow you to sell, this would imply that they are not capitalized well enough. It's a liquidity problem that they don't have the money to put up the collateral to be able to purchase shares of GameStop when the requirements go from a few percent to 100%.
The reason we did it was because Robinhood is a brokerage firm. We have lots of financial requirements, including SEC net capital requirements and clearinghouse deposits. So that's money that we have to deposit at various clearinghouses. So some of these requirements fluctuate quite a bit based on volatility in the markets, and they can be substantial in the current environment where there's a lot of volatility and a lot of concentrated activity in these names that have been going viral on social media.
It's come out now that one of the reasons that Robinhood stopped trading on GameStop stock and others was because of their capital requirements. He was literally asked point blank by Andrew Ross Sorkin on the day that happened. They were like, do you have a liquidity problem? He said no.
All sorts of new questions about whether there's a systemic issue underneath the system and underneath the company unto itself.
No, there was no liquidity problem. And to be clear, this was done preemptively.
Since then, he's raised $3 billion. So I'm like, okay, it sounds like you had a huge liquidity problem.
So he said that the issue is that we would need to put up larger deposits, larger collateral as a result of them, the DTC, increasing the collateral requirements. So you need more money. So you're going to disable the ability to buy because it needs more money, but you don't have a money problem. There's no liquidity problem. That right there is pretty much reason that the internet is exploding.
Okay, so if it's not cash, I guess we'll have to consider the other options, all of which are worse.
Luckily, we do know that Robinhood's CEO will be appearing later this month. Let's put this up there on the screen before the House Financial Services Committee on February 18th. He's got a lot of questions to answer. If they had just been honest about that, this entire story looks different. And we really need to find out why. I mean, he basically lied on national television for literally no apparent reason, or maybe there is a reason.
Was it actually that sort of cronyism? Did some hedge fund boss call up Robinhood and tell them to stop this peasant rebellion? Or was it a government crackdown? Did the SEC call up Robinhood and tell them to make that move? Is Robinhood just trying to play Big Brother and protect its users from themselves by stopping unwise investments? Or maybe it's just a money thing.
Spill the beans, man. What happened last week? Why do you stop people? Why couldn't people buy the GameStop shares?
We have to put up money based on some factors. There's a component which is value at risk. And then there's a special component which is discretionary.
Discretionary meaning like it's just their opinion.
Yeah.
And who are these people that are?
It's a consortium. It's not quite a government agency. I don't really know the details of all of that.
You were mentioning that it was convoluted on purpose.
It's insane, dude. It's like the Federal Express, which I don't know if they really wanted you to think it was actually a federal company, but of course the Federal Reserve, also not a federal company, an arm of the Bank of International Settlements, a Swiss bank. One of many central banks throughout the world, like the Bank of England and the Bank of Australia, that are not governed by their government.
This is Ian's time to shine.
Hello.
The Federal Reserve, all this stuff. That's what I was thinking when I looked at NSCC. I was like, wait, is this not? What is this entity? It's not regulated. It's not part of the government. It's a private entity. What is this? NSCC is actually a private entity, a subsidiary of the DTCC.
The request was around $3 billion. It's a big number. Like $3 billion is a large number, right?
What everyone wants to know is like, did something maybe shady go down here?
If they do have a liquidity problem, why can't you just simply come out and say that rather than use weasel words that will cause people to assume the worst of you based on your financial relationship with Citadel, who has a financial interest in Melvin Capital, who is about to go bankrupt from shorting the shares of stock that you just disabled trading on?
I think it's Citadel is the name of the fund.
Yes.
That owns about 30% of them. And they were one of these hedge funds who had been shorting GameStop. So it seems much more likely.
Robinhood stands for everyday investors. And we've gotten a lot of criticism that, maybe there should be more restrictions.
Who is making that criticism? Not one of the hundreds of thousands of negative app reviews was made because people think you aren't being restrictive enough. Nobody is begging you for a stronger iron fist, except for a very fringe but potentially very influential few. Who would these people be? Well, they can only be one of two. Powerful elites in government or powerful elites in finance who don't take kindly to the little guy beating them at their own game. And the fact that this CEO would reference them, despite the peasantry storming his castle gate with pitchforks and torches, at least implies to me that some of these few are in his ear with particularly loud voices.
They said that there are requirements. The SEC, capital obligations, clearinghouse deposits, they had to do it, right? They just said in an email to me, Tim, you moron, the game is rigged. We're telling you it's rigged. When the game is set up in such a way that you benefit, the SEC requires us to jam.
That seems another one of those misinformation and conspiracy theories. Certainly, we made decisions based on the financial requirements, including SEC net capital obligations and clearinghouse deposits.
But they said they're obligated to the SEC.
But they didn't say for what. It's a manipulation tactic.
But they did something, and then they said we're obligated to the SEC to behave in this fashion.
We're obligated to provide certain things. So they didn't say the SEC actually told us to do anything. It's a trick. It's a way they twist language to make you assume. It's a manipulation technique.
Seems weird that you'd get a sudden $10 billion demand. $3
billion.
3 in the morning. Sorry, how much?
Yeah. It was $3 billion US dollars.
$3 billion. Okay, $3 billion.
Yeah, around.
Just suddenly out of nowhere. And what percentage?
I wouldn't impute shadiness to it or anything like that.
This has been unprecedented activity, concentrated in a few names.
Basically, there was another call, and they lowered it to something like $1.4 billion from 3.
Our team is in constant communication with our regulators.
We proposed marking these volatile stock position closing only.
When you finally find a way to win, they shut you down. Now, initially, I titled this podcast, it was the feds. Why? Because the initial story that I had said federal regulator intervenes. And turns out, apparently, the NSCC, which is the principal clearinghouse for stocks, told Robinhood, the trading app, that they had to deposit $3 billion security deposit. And when they eventually negotiated down, saying we can't do that, they said $700 million. I believe it was 700. Maybe actually I believe it was $700 million. But you also have to freeze these stocks.
Even if I buy his stated explanation that volatility puts the company in a difficult position operationally, his moves still don't make any sense and imply the worst may actually be true. If things are too volatile, why not suspend all transactions temporarily? If your company needs a minute to collect itself, why not just take a minute to collect yourself and step away entirely, instead of banning only specific targeted transactions? And why just one type of transaction? The company only banned GameStop buys.
They came back and they said, okay, the charge is, or the deposit's $700 million, which we then deposited and paid promptly, and then everything was fine. We knew this was a bad outcome for customers.
Have you gotten calls from the SEC?
Well, the SEC indicated late last week that it's monitoring developments, and I think that's extremely important in the current situation. Some of the issues that you were just chatting about, namely the capital needs of Robinhood and the necessity and the possible necessity of the trading limits that they imposed, are certainly something the commission staff ought to be getting a handle on and understanding.
You know, and to be fair, like, these are unprecedented events with these meme stocks, and you know, there was a lot of activity, so there probably is some amount of extra risk in the system.
So they shorted 140% of the stock. So
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was a huge amount. It was more than all.
I know it was more than 100%. I didn't know the 140% number.
So that's why even a small amount is going to screw people enormously.
Exactly.
All right, so it sounds like this organization, calls you up and they basically have a gun to your head. Did you sell your clients down the river, or did you have no choice? And if you had no choice, that's understandable. But then, we got to find out why you had no choice. And who are these people that are saying you have no choice?
I think that's fair. You know, we have to comply with these requirements. Financial institutions have requirements.
We really need to find out, like, why. I mean, he basically lied on national television for literally no apparent reason, or maybe there is a reason.
Well, here's what's so sketchy about it. Who are they raising money from?
Yeah.
A lot of it is hedge funds who need to cover their short positions.
Mhm.
And so to me, it was, let's just say, incredibly shady that at the same time that they shut down the ability to buy the stock, not to sell it, you can still sell it, but to buy the stock. And even I saw some indications that they were selling people's positions without them wanting them to, at the same time that they're taking in billions of dollars in new capital from these hedge funds. Almost seems like
Market makers execute our trades. They execute trades of every broker dealer. This was a clearinghouse decision, and it was just based on the capital requirements. So, Citadel and other market makers weren't involved in that.
But wouldn't they have a strong say in who got put in charge of that organization, since it's an industry consortium, not a government regulatory agency?
I don't have any reason to believe that. Then you're getting into kind of the conspiracy theories a little bit.
Okay. All right.
That did not happen. Hopefully I'm being clear about that. Nobody pressured us. We didn't do this at the direction of a market maker that we route our orders to.
even if you put Robinhood aside and even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, how they were just facing this like liquidity issue and they didn't know how to deal with it and they're just like in over their heads, like
Robinhood was not the only broker that restricted buying of these securities.
Other stock brokerages did also suspend GameStop and other stock buys, but not everybody did, and the restrictions weren't uniform. Each brokerage's policies were a little bit different. If the government wanted to stomp out Gamestonk, the boot would be much larger, instead of a special boot just for Robinhood.
So think of it from the point of view of the brokerage, right? Especially if people are selling stocks short, which has the potential for unlimited losses. If your client goes bust and enough of your clients goes bust, then the brokerage goes bust.
every other major trading platform did the same thing.
Yes.
So did they all have this sudden, at the same time, synchronized massive liquidity issue?
You know, then you're getting into kind of the conspiracy theories a little bit.
Okay. All right.
You're going to own nothing. You're going to be happy. You're not going to own a car. You won't own a house. Good luck. You might not own stock. You're not going to own a business. You won't own your own body soon. This is the future. And I've never been more convinced of it than spending time on that app. And the app is fun. It's fun hearing how it's going to happen. Isn't that sick?
the financial system that allows customers to trade shares is sort of a complex web of multiple parties, and it's hard to. I think everyone says, "Oh, it could be better. It could be improved." It's just the necessity of trading equities in the U.S. that you have to do all these things.
Idea that the Wall Street complex has anything to do with laissez-faire market organic capitalism is complete nonsense. It is a complete government program. It's all run by the Federal Reserve. It's all the big banks are propped up by the Federal Reserve, which is they pretend to be a private company. The Federal Reserve is the government Department of Money and Banking, and they just claim to be a private company, so they don't even have to deal with any of the oversight, but that a department of government would have to go through.
When, your retail investors and the people at home are winning, this just seems to be the signal to me that you're at the end of the party. Even just the fact that you have a climate for this is because so many people are forced to put their money into these brokerage accounts and try and trade for themselves just to get returns. So a lot of the fact that you even have a market climate where people are attracted to the casino like this is because of everything that the Fed has done.
Yeah.
Is it systemic risk? Well, that's why we're worried that the center will not hold and the entire market could collapse.
Yes. The 1-2 punch of the ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve, combined with this strategy of buying out-of-the-money calls, has proven very effective.
Raises all sorts of new questions about whether there's a systemic issue underneath the system and underneath the company unto itself.
No, there was no liquidity problem.
So, but if I'm borrowing this share from somebody, they don't get any of the money?
No, because they're charging you juice to borrow it. Or if they're your broker, they're lending it out to you without any juice.
The ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve.
Believe it or not, you can sometimes trade stocks with borrowed money.
People used to put their money in savings account. Your grandparents kept change. They kept jars of change around because that was like their mentality. Like, you save money, that's money, and you save it. Now, if we lived in an economy with normal interest rates, a lot of people, if they were looking to make a profit off their money, they can save their money, they can make modest investments. But when it's at zero interest rates, then what do you do if you want to make money?
The ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve, combined with this strategy of buying out-of-the-money calls, has proven very effective.
No one knows what the Fed is. No one knows how the Federal Reserve works.
It's sad and true, man.
Investors focus on the Fed and the interest rates that they set. But if you turn on like CNBC or you read the Wall Street Journal, it's never like a broader philosophical discussion about the Federal Reserve and what impact that actually has on markets. It's always like very kind of short-sighted, well, if the Fed raises rates, the market will be worse tomorrow. You could talk about the fact that hedge funds are manipulating markets, or you could talk about the fact that platforms like Robinhood are shutting down, the people's ability to buy the Gamestonk stock, and it's not, I'm not even saying like none of these are problems. Certainly I think they are, and they can have negative effects, but none of that really gets at the core of what's going on. The fact is, the real fraud is what the Fed is doing to our money. That's the real fraud. That's really stealing from the American people.
Like, they've got armed guards at the Bull outside Wall Street now. It's like, look, if you need armed guards for just, a private institution.
It's not working.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You're doing something that people hate, and you should stop.
What's the response to this going to be from the cathedral? This includes the corporate press, the government, the deep state, the big banks, academia, all of them, all of these outlets. What's the response going to be? What do you think? And they'll do it in the name of something. They'll try to push it in the name of like market volatility or something. Like, these motherfuckers have a problem with market volatility. When these hedge funds are making billions off market volatility, that's just fine. But all of a sudden, when some people on Reddit are making millions off of it, then that's a big problem.
Normal old media outlets were blaming the kids who caught the adults breaking the law rather than the adults that were breaking the law. the point at which it started to become a real middle finger to the establishment, I believe it was when the press started covering them in a negative manner, when brokerages decided that have ownership in the companies that shorted the stock, by the way, decided we're going to stop trading on GME. We're not going to allow you to buy anymore because it's in our financial best interest that you not be able to do that. That's when it started to become a full-blown
hornet's nest.
I think it's amazing.
And Wall Street kicked
pilling.
it. And then they kicked it again. And they kicked it again. And then big tech stepped up and kicked the hornets. And they're getting stung like crazy. And they just keep kicking it. What's wrong with these people? I want to show you how the media is going to try and trick you into supporting the hedge funds. What started as a half-serious Reddit campaign to rally around GameStop has ballooned into something much larger. Is this, as Elizabeth Warren has suggested, just a psychotic internet casino that is tearing the fabric of society apart? The GameStop pump, like Trumpism, QAnon, or Gamergate, is also a meme first and a political movement second. And ideologies born from the internet evolve like any other kind of internet content.
The memes are literally the ones that are waking people up and are more effective than a lot of the mainstream media propaganda. Lydia?
The cathedral is terrified of memes.
They'll find whatever excuse they can. I think they're going to try to insert identity politics into it somehow. You know, it's like the Trump supporter, racist Nazis on Reddit are trying to take down the economy.
Their language is hateful, et cetera, we have to take down their Discord server.
Facebook is banning it. We heard Discord's banning it. We saw CNN yesterday describe this to Trumpism.
Yeah.
NPR was talking about
Here we go.
likening this to Gamergate because of harassment of hedge fund managers.
Think of how surreal it is when people on the left are using essentially far-right libertarian tactics to bring down billionaires, and supposedly populistic left-wing media that's always talking about how the bourgeois are evil are defending hedge funders. The world's gone completely nuts.
Headline in Forbes: ignore the populist GameStop hype. Short sellers are heroes.
What?
Headline Washington Post says the good guys in the GameStop story, it's the hedge funds and the short sellers.
Okay, so now the Wall Street hedge fund managers are the heroes and the victims. Like, I'm supposed to care about Patrick Bateman? Are you serious?
Look at the obfuscation. Look at the manipulation. Look at the disinformation propaganda campaign used against individuals, the plebes who are finally playing in the stock market by the rules of the hedge funds. And the hedge funds and establishment are saying, wait. We can only win this game, not you, when they're playing by the rules fairly. And this is the insanity of it. They're conspiring, colluding together to make sure businesses go out of business for the benefit of vultures that are going to be making money off of that stock going down. Washington Post wrote an opinion piece about the hedge funds being the good guys. We have MSNBC literally had an anchor on there talking about how the Reddit traders are going to be self-harming themselves, like Instagram women who are depressed, that they're going to start cutting themselves because they're wasting their time. I'm not kidding you. It's absolutely bonkers and absolutely just insane, the coverage we're seeing by MSNBC. And then, of course, we also had Jimmy Kimmel on television to the national public talking about these amateur investors who are maybe influenced by
Russia. Give the government more power. It's Russia. It's Nazis. Quick. Oh, we defeated them once. We got to defeat them again. They're trying to take the stonks away.
Oh, this isn't even actually a real thing happening. It's all the Russians.
Or the white nationalists hate Wall Street for some reason.
like what? This just doesn't make any sense.
Oh my, this is beautiful.
This caught them so off guard that they don't even have time to have a backroom meeting and plan out a strategy and how we're going to sell this. They're just moving as fast as they can, and it's just blatant for everyone to see.
Oh my God, these millennials who are otherwise penniless have taken their stimulus money and weaponized it, and they're coming for you. They're going to destroy your hedge fund. You'll be out on the streets and you're 70 years old. Whoa, be scared.
CNBC has been a goldmine of these type of clips, but I mean, they've tried everything. They've tried smearing.
Iconoclast in chief, space guy, and Tesla founder Elon Musk did Gamestonk. By the way, Musk has also been a longtime critic of social media censoring and was a prominent COVID-19 skeptic. Who else does that remind me of? Probably no one.
They've tried like this sort of patronizing approach of, oh, we're just worried about them and we don't want these retail investors who really don't understand what's going on here in this big, complicated financial game.
I'm concerned about is that this is a pump and dump scheme that effectively is being cloaked, as Mother Teresa has arrived on the scene. But what I wonder is whether these folks trying to, quote unquote, stick it to the man are ultimately going to be sticking it to themselves, in truth, because as you just said, the fundamentals of this are so out of whack, and there are people who are going to lose a lot of money who can't afford to lose the money.
When people rise into some degree of wealth, as many boomers did, far disproportionate to millennials, I would say, they tend to want to hold that wealth. And there's nothing, by the way, wrong with that, but their fear is causing market instability now. Because the legacy media, as usual, the biggest culprits of what's going wrong in the world, have whipped them up into a frenzy.
Grand Theft Pension Fund. Can you please explain this GameStop, Reddit, stock market deal?
Of course.
So there's a store called GameStop that sells video games. Not a great business to be in since games can be downloaded now, which is why the serious investors decided to short GameStop, which means to bet against it. But the Redditors are gamers who have a semi-ironic love for the store, so they started making memes encouraging each other to punish the serious people by buying worthless GameStop stocks.
I'm seeing a lot of people say like, oh, these investors, they're really gonna learn a hard lesson because GameStop is clearly not worth $400 a share. It's like they fucking clearly know that.
Yeah.
They obviously know that. Do you think that that is a way for them to just try to protect hedge funds while looking like they're doing it for the investors?
Yes?
Yeah.
And you say, hey, I like this coin. I want more coin. So what do?
Or they actually don't understand why people did that?
It's just a way to express frustration, anger, and yes, a feeling of helplessness.
You jump up and
But there's no question that the populist revolt has worked for GameStop stock.
No one's protecting the hedge fund guys. What we're saying is, before you dance on their graves, better check their pulse and look for the exit door, because there's a good chance they're not dead and they're coming for you. And we know this, Michael, because you've been one of those guys forever.
Tell you something, Wall Street is going to be fine, all right? There are millions of people who are out of work and thousands of businesses closing, and yet the stock market is at an all-time high.
This is something that is a huge white pill to me, is that after, it's almost like they're out of it. Like whatever the next enemy becomes.
They're throwing the stapler at the monster. We all know those movies you're running, you're shooting it, the bullets bounce off, then you're throwing like a bowling ball, and now you're just throwing a stapler and the monster's like, what? Am I supposed to be confused by this?
Go to Google and type in silver and Reddit and you see all these top stories. Silver is the new short squeeze target for Reddit traders. Move over, GameStop. Reddit traders are targeting silver now. That sounds weird. That doesn't sound like Reddit. They wouldn't just stop. They've been saying diamond hands, hold the stock, don't sell.
First, Google puts up a big memo. It says silver prices surged to 8-year high. But the first article is by the Wall Street Journal that says silver prices jump in GameStop-like frenzy. Then it's the New York Times. Silver rises with hype. It's the next GameStop.
So I go to Reddit. What do I see? The number one post on the entire website, not just Wall Street Bets, is don't buy silver.
Here's a conspiracy theory for you. iShares Silver Trust, who reportedly added 37 million ounces of silver Friday night, is an ETF consisting primarily of silver held by JP Morgan Chase. Are they spreading disinformation to make people think Wall Street Bets is behind silver going up to 45 an ounce? Then, when everyone jumps on board, they flood the market with silver and crash it.
Probably he's right. I mean, honestly, from working for a big firm, that sounds about what we used to do.
We are seeing exactly why Wall Street Bets is doing what they're doing. We are seeing the crony machine in play. They are lying to you to get you to buy silver so they can pump the price of silver up. Then all of their friends will sell out when silver peaks, leave you holding an empty bag. They do it all the time, and they're doing it in our face right now.
Now, it's not just the New York Post there. It's also CNBC that has this headline: silver jumps 8%, touches 8-year high as Reddit traders try their squeeze play with the medal.
I believe it's the #1 post on Wall Street Bets, why you definitely should not under any circumstances fall for the silver scams. You are being played by the most powerful elite on the planet.
The bottom line is Deep Value is a 22-year-old intern working for a fucking major hedge fund that's coming in here and telling everybody and their mother what to buy, back up the truck. It's not on CNBC.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it would be the ultimate long con to have a plant inside Wall Street Bets.
There are some good media outlets that actually tried to understand the entire story, but also a lot of other media outlets that were more than happy to use lies and slander, claim alt-right, Nazi, hackers. These people are just buying to manipulate the stock, completely ignoring the fact that there's 120 to 140% short flow. Now that we see the bias inherent in certain institutions and how they cover things, are we going to continue to consider them as authoritative?
But this is all just a distraction, like it always is. It's always a distraction from the real issue, which is power, which has always been power, which is the fact that this system is rigged, and it's rigged against regular people and for the elite.
The veil has been shattered. We're seeing two things right now. Two things. The first, they don't like that GameStop has actually, the GameStop retail investors are actually hurting the hedge funds. Melvin Capital down 53%. They don't like it. So what we're seeing now is, I believe this is more likely to be some kind of standalone complex where all these people in media have connections. They get fake stories seeded, and then dumb journalists with malicious journalists who are trying to make a pretty penny pump out this story to divert everyone's attention away from GameStop. A lot of the people who are investing are probably just someone who saw the news. There's now 8 million users on r/Wall Street Bets. 8 million.
You can see the graph shoot up in the number of people who are interested in this thing and who want to take part in pushing back against what they view, I think, rightly, as a kind of ignorant, detached, and self-interested elite class.
President Biden to address the GameStop controversy when he meets with his economic team a little bit later this morning?
No. That's not the focus.
Story. Okay.
I know it's a big story, but it doesn't, obviously.
What we're talking about really is just the sort of abstract and almost indefinable or unquantifiable concept of power and influence. The little guys feel that they don't have the influence they deserve, and that's probably true. And the big guys feel that the influence that they have accrued is being attacked and being taken from them, which is also true.
We can see right through it now. It's almost like, the Wizard of Oz, and they pulled the curtain back and we can see the man behind the curtain.
And he's
still going.
Just close my eyes and they won't see me.
Right.
But there is going to be an investigation. There's no way somebody's not getting popped. Whether it's the Citadel Robinhood collusion or whether it's the insider that was the wolf in sheep's clothing on Reddit, something's going to come out. This story is just...
Well, I mean, the thing is that, do these guys ever pay the price?
Who?
These guys who manipulate markets, like
No,
Tim, right? I mean, like Goldman Sachs, and when they got everybody to invest in these portfolios that crash and burn, what Goldman Sachs guy went to jail for that? I mean...
No, they became the Treasury Secretary.
Is the White House concerned about the stock market activity we're seeing around GameStop? And have there been any conversations with the SEC about how to proceed?
Well, I'm also happy to repeat that we have the first female Treasury Secretary.
Now we got Janet Yellen, formerly at the Federal Reserve, now with the Treasury. When the Federal Reserve has supposedly started to basically, create a firewall between the two.
There have been some kind of concerns about her previous engagements with Citadel and speaking fees that she has received from Citadel.
Citadel paid Yellen over $800,000 in just the last couple of years, in fact. So it would appear that there might be a conflict of interest here.
Are there any plans to have her recuse herself from advising the president on GameStop and the whole Robinhood situation?
Well, just to be clear, what I said was that we have the Treasury Secretary is now confirmed. Obviously, we have a broad economic team separate from the GameStop issue. The Secretary of Treasury is one of the world-renowned experts on markets, on the economy. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone she was paid to give her perspective and advice before she came into office.
Okay, but
my God.
That's not the question. The question is not, hey, should she give speeches? The question is not, hey, Should she get paid for speeches? The question is, to the extent that she was paid handsomely for speeches by this company, isn't there kind of a problem there if she's the one who's supposed to be overseeing and regulating companies like this? Isn't that a little bit of an issue? But I don't care if she receives money for a speech necessarily. I care that she's now being asked to oversee those people who pay her.
There's so much nepotism. All these people are part of the same group.
I am not a financial services professional. I am a MacBook repair person trying to make sense of a crazy world. Someone needs to be in trouble for everything that happened over this past week, whether it's lying to news outlets, lying about the amount of money that is available in a brokerage firm, lying about your short interest, if you are lying about your short interest, shorting a stock to this point, to the point where you can literally destabilize the entire financial system as we know it.
But right now, I'm hearing lots of people who should know better fret about how these red-hot theme stocks, I think GameStop, AMC, BlackBerry, Virgin Galactic, wow, represent some kind of new risk to the market. The action in the stocks has to some degree come unglued from the fundamentals, but that happens a lot.
There's a viral post now on Reddit where they're saying they believe that what's really going on is that these big funds have been counterfeiting stocks, essentially. And if they can't buy stocks to cover their game, their manipulation, then it all falls apart. And the SEC will be forced to intervene. And as they said on Reddit, it'll be bigger than Enron.
Well, I understand. Interesting, isn't it? I understand that the administration is taking a look. The SEC is taking a look at what that is. But we'll all be reviewing it. But interesting. It's interesting.
But what's really incredible is watching the reaction of the entire cathedral. The ruling class, the corporate press, the financial sector, all of them are freaking the fuck out. Way more than they did over 2020 when you had this much bigger transfer of wealth, because that transfer of wealth was from the poor and the middle class to the top of the upper class. Now, that doesn't freak them out because that's just the way the system's supposed to work.
How did we get to a bunch of Redditors squeezing hedge funds to the point where there's this idea that, hedge funds might have to get bailed out?
I think that what you're seeing is essentially a pushback against the establishment in a really important way. You have a lot of people, and I would encourage anybody who is dismissive of this thing to go into wallstreetbets and actually just read the forums. And I think that you're going to see three kinds of posts. The first kind of content are a lot of people doing some incredible fundamental diligence on companies, trying to think about long-term value. And in my opinion, many of them are doing as good and frankly a better job than a lot of hedge fund analysts that I work with.
Deep Value put out some DD, as we call due diligence in the industry.
They do have a due diligence section that is very separated from the part where people post things in a humorous fashion. And there is sometimes some fairly good stuff there.
The second are a lot of people who believe that, coming out of 2008, what happened was Wall Street took an enormous amount of risk and they left retail as the bag holder.
I think that there are a lot of people that are aggravated at people who make these risky trades, who do things they're not supposed to, not being held accountable. And this is an important moment because we're going to find out who is held accountable and who is to blame.
People are making billions of dollars off speculating in these really kind of crazy ways.
This is what they blamed 2008 for.
It shows that you aren't really accountable, and it shows that you aren't really interested in a good faith society. And that's the basis of civil society into which we all enter and agree on a certain set of rules, so we won't have designs on our neighbors and our neighbors won't have designs on us, and we'll be able to operate freely and consensually through voluntary interactions and in transactions governed by fair laws, and we can all just get on with our lives. And that sounds really appealing, doesn't it?
There's a lot of aggravation over what happened in 2007 and 2008. There's a lot of underlying resentment for these things that have not necessarily been addressed. And what they're doing is this is a way to beat them at their own game, using their own greed against them.
And a lot of these kids were in grade school and high school when that happened. They lost their homes. Their parents lost their jobs. And they've always wondered, why did those folks get bailed out for taking enormous amounts of risk and nobody helped and showed up to help my family?
I feel like I could not want a mortgage and then talk to you and be like, I just got a new mortgage. Like this guy.
Here's
Tim.
the thing. I'm a fun guy to talk to, and I'm going to call, and we're going to connect a little bit.
And you're going to follow up, too.
And I'm going to follow up because I got a bunch of folders on that desk, and I'm going to hit them once or twice a day.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that we can, do business together. And if it doesn't make sense, Tom, we part as friends.
Yeah.
And that was my line. That was a line we all said. We said.
And then, but you're trained to not accept. No, like that's the thing.
I wouldn't
the
use
really
the word
good guys
trained.
Right.
I'd be very loose with the training that we all received. The training was a guy going, how about you make some fucking money?
Right.
And shutting his door.
Yeah.
And then literally a bunch of unemployable guys, some of whom had DWIs whose mothers were dropping them off at the office, then got on phones and called people and said we were financial advisors.
Right. Oh.
Everyone's realizing there's nothing real anymore. No one believes the same set of facts. Money is basically meaningless at this point. When the market crash happened, everybody moved down a little bit. Yeah. Professionals were taking whatever job they could get in desperation. Millennials then took gutter jobs, and then the younger people who were supposed to be working fast food to get started were having no jobs. Nothing. Now they're just sitting there saying, system's broken. It's always been broken.
Because these were adjustable rate mortgages, and you got 2 or 3 years of a fixed rate, a little stability, and then, hey, let's ride the rails together. Like, you're smart, financially savvy guy.
Yeah.
Why not take a little chance? Because we all are. And the thing is, no one thought this was all going to go bad. That's the thing. No one really, like, all the, revisionist history is like, these guys were con artists and everything. And it's like, okay, we weren't the most reputable people, but I took an adjustable rate mortgage when I bought a house. Like, nobody knew these things. Nobody knew you weren't going to be able to get out of an adjustable. We thought you'd be able to get out of it.
Some of that is the fault of the borrower, but some of it, of course, is bad disclosures or bad practices on the parts of the financial institutions. The Federal Reserve has been working hard on consumer protection under my chairmanship, and this new bureau, which will be within the Fed, but independent, will also be responsible.
But as soon as you get an elite class that's like, actually, no, you can't do these things that we can do. We've got rules that you don't have. Then it becomes, right, so we've got an evil and ill will that underpins this thing. And then it becomes uncomfortable but then people have got designs on what you have because they don't think you have it fairly, because you don't have it fairly. You got it by having a rule for you and a rule for them, and never the twain should meet.
We've seen a systemic assault on small business and middle America for the past years at the behest, literal destruction with the burning down the rioting and then the lockdowns on behalf of corporate America.
A lot of these people in the stock market are the ones who got rich throughout the past year while everyone else was suffering.
Yeah.
That was...
I think that's adding to the frustration.
Yeah, imagine that.
Talking about kicking somebody while they're already down.
Seriously.
Man.
So what they're basically saying is $600 is actually a lot of money. All you have to do is invest it really carefully. And they're like, oh, no, not like that. Not like that.
The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home getting the checks from the government, okay? And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people.
We all understood what stock buybacks are about. They're about companies buying back their own stock so they can inflate the price of that stock. That's just the economics of what happens.
One of the huge things that's interesting about this is that so much of this is driven by just fury at the Wall Street class. People are angry at the big banks, and they should be. I mean, after the year 2020, who could blame them?
I've seen many people in other different walks of life in minor ways finding themselves diametrically opposed to the elite class. And the elite class essentially have to come to the table and admit that they have accrued more than is justifiable.
This is happening at a time when millions of people are out of work, when millions of people are struggling.
A lot of people were put out of work by the pandemic over the past year. They have 8 hours free a day that they didn't before. So a lot of people now have time to sit there all day and read up on these things. And all of this information that they used to make this stock trade was public. The amount of shares that were short, this is all publicly available information. So they're just deciding, okay, why don't we make trades based on this information? And they did, and they made money at it.
That is not a way for them to be able to build any security at all. That doesn't create a healthy market. What we need is a healthy stock market, and to have a healthy stock market, you gotta have a cop on the beat.
Oh, you guys made money and the hedge fund class lost. That we need to intervene on right away. That we need to step in on and say, no, we have to protect the hedge fund class. It was big business interests who bought off the government to make it this huge government to begin with.
Keep in mind, one of the reasons it appears that Robinhood had to do what it did in terms of banning certain transactions is because they didn't have the cash to cover what was necessary for these transactions. And the cash is necessary because of regulations installed by, among other federal regulations, Dodd-Frank.
It's very, very comprehensive. It is certainly by far the most comprehensive financial regulatory reform since the 1930s.
For all of the regulatory state that's been built up, and the financial industry is one of the most heavily, if not the most heavily regulated sector in the economy. It's incredibly regulated. I mean, you cannot operate a brokerage firm without just constant compliance with regulators. I mean, like every single move that you make.
I think everyone says, oh, it could be better, it could be improved.
And it makes a lot of fundamental changes in our financial system. To name just a few of them, it creates a Financial Stability Oversight Council, which brings together the heads of all the regulatory agencies and says, let's all work together to see if we can identify any risks that might be arising in our financial system.
It's just the necessity of trading equities in the U.S.
For all of this, they've never done anything to slow down, hedge fund speculation. But look what just happened right here. They were so overexposed that they had shorted 140% of the company. You think they'll think twice about doing that again?
The demanipulation of the stock prices against a hedge fund that is centrally guaranteed by government and by government propped up central banking, and then by so-called private banks with 1 million government loans and contracts. This is essentially an attack on socialism. Just so you know, what Reddit is engaged in, ironically enough, is a libertarian referendum on a socialistic banking system that favors the rich by structure because central government tends to pal around with the rich that donate to their campaigns.
Remember the other half of this. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to lose money around this, a lot of money that they can't afford to lose.
There's this idea that, hedge funds might have to get bailed out.
Now the SEC is saying it's going to investigate several things.
There's going to be an investigation here. We know there are going to be people who are going to turn out to be hurt.
Which means it's going to investigate the little people that made millions of dollars in the early days of GameStop trading.
The SEC has never even completed its rules defining what market manipulation is.
Which is the weaponization of the fiscal system to try to punish people for getting the novel idea, hey, because of market forces being pushed in the opposite direction, we can just invert them and we can make money and siphon the hedge funds. The hedge fund class is acting as though the free market forces that are fucking with the hedge funds is more artificial than their own manipulation of stock prices. And the truth is that that's not the case. When you've got a stock that's being repeatedly massively undervalued and driven down by a hedge fund to the tune of billions of dollars that has shorted more stock than physically exists in order to attempt to bankrupt the company, putting people out of work, that's manipulation.
What this legislation does is greatly strengthen the provisions to require regulators not just to look at their individual fiefdom, but to look at the whole financial system and try to identify risks that might be arising.
If it turns out that we really did cheat you, it'll never be made public. There'll be very little that you can do about it.
Something about it that it kind of feels like like when the internet first came out and we almost didn't know what we could do with this thing, and then someone would come up, well here, we can do this, we can message each other, or you can put a website up, or you could sell things on this website. There's all these things that no one really thought to do that before. And not that I know that this hasn't happened before, or I've never seen an example like this, but it feels like one of those moments where you're like, whoa, people really can do this now.
The story has everything we needed to just say no to the black pills, at least for a little while longer, and enjoy a moment of mischief that gives hope that At least some of our corrupt rulers may not be as powerful as they seem.
One of the reasons I'm always so optimistic about the future is because I don't think who we're up against are very clever or strategic or sophisticated.
I imagine that they probably will try to create some sort of legislation against this, but the problem is, like, okay, you'll legislate against that thing, but the emotion and the impetus behind it hasn't gone away.
What are we going to do about the fact that our financial system could potentially be brought down by a greedy short-selling hedge fund and a bunch of people on Reddit that call them out for it?
What this requires is reform. It's a demand for reform when these things happen, because it shows that there's a problem with the system, and every system that's built by mankind is going to be flawed in some way. And over time, the problems that are created by those flaws build up until they're unacceptable.
People who are not into socialism, look at what's happening with the corruption and the command economy, how these elites can control socialism for me, but not for thee, essentially. They say, see, that's socialism, when the powerful elites steal the resource and keep it for themselves. Socialists are saying that's capitalism. That through their monopolistic power, they collude and just stop poor people from being able to get access to any of the resources. And I'm just like, yo, that's just corruption.
That's what's going on with this banking cartel system. It has nothing to do with just whether banking should exist in theory. What it has to do with is, should the government create a Federal Reserve that then prints money out of thin air and hands it to the big banks at 0% interest?
Remember when you had a party and you couldn't clean up the next day and you heard the doors of your parents' car shut? But after that moment of sheer terror, you were like, you looked around at the house and you knew it was so bad that it wasn't one or two things you could grab. There was so much shit. They knew what was happening. They're gonna get you, and you just had to kind of release yourself and go, hey, man, sorry, we had a party.
After 2020, it's like impossible for them to even pretend that there's any degree of competence going on, like that this whole thing isn't just a shit show. It's rigged not in your favor, and like it's becoming very hard for them to keep this whole thing together, to even pretend that this is, what we're selling you isn't complete bullshit.
Maybe the establishment elites, who normally have an airtight control of the media and the narrative and the system, are slipping. They're losing their grip.
If you've got a hose that you're piping water through at high pressure, and the hose springs a leak, and you put your finger down on it, okay, but the pressure hasn't gone away. You're just artificially preventing that pressure from exhibiting at this point, and so it bursts up again somewhere else. You got to put another thing down, and until the entire thing will split open because you just got too many points on it that you're holding down.
Sorry, we had a party. That's what you're gonna have to tell your children. We had a party for 50 years. We did it on cheap credit. We did it by going all over the world and doing things we should not have been doing. Bad things. We had a 50-year party. We bought homes and cars, and we mortgaged them, and we put them on credit cards, and we took out lines of credit. We took out big mortgages. We built big, beautiful cities and then stopped giving a shit about them. And we financed this with expansion, that was, financed by war and deceit and fraud.
When you have a distributed network of people who have far too much time on their hands and are smarter than they are kind of moronic, like they all call themselves like a proud community of autists, but you don't want to fuck with those people.
Like you were saying, this is an entire population with too much time in their hands who also spend their time trying to figure out how the enemy, in this case in the video games, the enemy works, and what weapons do I need to do to conquer this enemy.
You see the market move, which is quantifiable, which makes it really interesting because you can actually see what's happening. It's not just a sentiment, right? It's not just how people feel. It's quantifiable metrics there in front of you.
It becomes a game to them. It's like, okay, let's do A/B testing. Let's try different tactics. And it's decentralized. So you have an army of these people.
What's saying idle hands, the devil's playground?
Yes.
Well, that's something that the Wall Street funds should be saying right now, because you've got an economy shuttered, and a bunch of people sitting around saying, what do I do?
And then the third thing is a realization that instead of having idea dinners or, quiet, whispered conversations amongst hedge funds in the Hamptons. These kids have the courage to do it transparently in a forum.
It would, I think, be wiser for those people who currently benefit from the system to accept that that is an immutable reality of things that men build and roll with the punches rather than become authoritarian and start clamping down and, legislate, we have to protect ourselves.
The state has an interest in and has always had an interest in crushing dissent.
There's zero possibility that you're going to get help through Washington. So if that is where the focus lays for you, I can't help you. And you are right to be committed to your despair and nihilism.
Now, because you don't have 3 broadcast networks anymore and a handful of newspapers that were all run, by the way, by people that had been either compromised or happily going with the program, and you have this wild west of the internet.
Right now, we have this interesting nonpartisan mass effort where everyone can see the media is lying. Whatever you want to call it, there's a group of extremely powerful elites who are stripping away the resources and value from working class people.
And I'm not saying all of it is perfect by any means.
In some cases, it goes in a very, very bad direction. You kind of have this white nationalism, this sense of, oh, your life is bad because there's too many minorities. And now this racial identity means you can look at what your grandfather supposedly did. Now you're a great person. But this is another example. You could be at your desktop, your, what they call them, like workstation, and you can cause systemic carnage against some really nasty people and have lulls at the same time. Isn't that great?
I think it takes an enormous amount of faith in the system to be that transparent, to talk about things, and then for each individual to make their own mind up.
At the same time, podcasts are really popular, long form podcasts are really popular, and people are hungry for those kinds of conversations. There's a lot of dangerous ideas, quote unquote, flowing, being spread around through podcasts, meaning just like debates. Humor is one of the tools to balance the powers in society.
I think a lot of it's also the enormous disconnect between how people in power are presented as moral, superior, people who should be listened to and obeyed, as opposed to the reality.
People like me, people that I make funny content that I hope is funny, but a lot of it is wild and crazy. The kids from school brought people I didn't know, and they started drinking and smoking and throwing lamps, and they started buying houses and cars and going to war with other houses, and I didn't consent to any of that. I just listened to music. I was just trying to get my dick sucked in the closet. I'm trans, by the way. And then mommy and daddy, we didn't know. And then mommy and daddy are going to say something in Chinese, and then they're going to zap you, and you're going to fall to the floor, and they're going to give you a social credit score, and you're going to say, well, it is what it is, folks, because the party's fucking over. I say a lot of wild and crazy things about powerful people.
Yeah. You mock the powerful in there by bringing them down a notch. You give me freedom to think.
Well, thank you.
Meaning, like, you're shaking things up to where I don't feel constrained about what I can think about. And
well, that's awesome.
And that
thank you.
So you're not telling me what to think. You're giving me the freedom to think. And that's what great comedy does. And it's arguable that the freedoms we do enjoy currently are thanks to the comedic voices or the people who mock. So to me, it's possible that humor is the very thing that saves the world.
I think the memes, I mean, they're viral right now. I'm tweeting and I'm Instagramming a whole bunch of them all the time because just in that one simple image, in that simple representation, you're able to get across ideas so much more effectively than any video, than any photo, than any article, than any other kind of media form.
And when you have this enormous disconnect and it gives people the opportunity to A, undermine it, and B, enjoy themselves and feel empowered that they're doing something about it, this is a very dangerous combo for the elites.
It feels to me like there's a common thread, and I haven't worked out what it is, but a common thread through a lot of what we're seeing at the moment. We've had the Capitol Hill, we've had the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, we've had Portland riots, we've had this that we're seeing happening with Wall Street Bets. The iterative speed of the devolving of what used to be these structures.
States are not quick actors. It's very, very hard, and no one will deny this, for any kind of government to act or react to a dynamic situation. Compared to that to Twitter, someone on Twitter or someone on Reddit or something like that. Yeah, where you have all these people, it's decentralized, everyone can be on top of it, and the information spreads more quickly.
This is one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time, not specifically on, countering, hedge funds shorting stocks, but just the idea that one of the like really powerful weapons that people have against the ruling elite is that there's so many more of us than there are of them. If enough people just decide we're not doing this anymore, then that's it. If 100 million Americans decide we're not sending our taxes in, we're not paying income tax anymore, then we just abolished the federal income tax. So there is enormous potential when large groups of people kind of get on the same page and realize that this whole system is rigged.
They're not spending time on Reddit. They don't know the internet. So this is going to be completely hit them upside the head out of nowhere. And by the time they were like, let's sit down and figure out how to react, it's 2 weeks later and they've already moved on. This is another reason I'm so enormously optimistic about the future of the West.
We're about to develop fusion power, so I think we're okay. I think we're going places.
I'm talking about like the U.S. current global economic order.
That's going to shatter. That's a weird.
It's falling apart right now.
Snake in the grass. Get into do whatever, but
that's what I was saying about
crypto for a reason.
the GameStop rebellion being just the beginning. I mean, these people have figured out how to do it. Why are they going to stop?
This was just like a moment where it's like, oh yeah, you guys can do this. You can do this. And but the fact that you could do this now, there's no reason why you can't do this again.
As if somehow on the internet there's any shortage of places to create communities. When you have 3.5 million people, let's propose 1% of them are programmers. Like, how hard is it going to be where all they're interested in doing is being able to text each other? They're not trying to build spaceships. They just need a space to exchange information, where there's a worldwide infrastructure designed to facilitate this, as you said earlier. It's glorious.
And this is part of the reason why everyone's freaking out. It's not just about this $70 billion that was lost. It's the fact that, well, now, I mean, what's to stop you from doing this again?